warm welcome to everybody. So this is Lesley Ann Patrick, and I would like to briefly introduce you to her because there's a set of formal introduction that I have here about her, and there is a lot of informal thoughts that I have about her, which I would be very happy to share with all of you. So Lesley is coming from Scotland. She is an AMI 12 to 18 trainer, and she has 4 wonderful children who also went to Montessori school, and that's the reason she even started a Montessori school in Scotland. So I am here with great confidence and a lot of reassurance that this is a beautiful pedagogy and philosophy and a way of living that we can all blindly follow, and trust that we would have wonderful results, or a wonderful life for our children and for ourselves also. She's had I would say 4 decades of experience now, Lesley, in Montessori education, and she's worked with all age groups from young children 3 to 6 and through adolescents. She's lived in a number of countries in Europe, in France, in England, Morocco, Ivory Coast, etc. And she's an alumnus from University of London and University of Cambridge. And it was her first teaching position, in fact, in Paris, that she discovered Montessori. And she later trained in the UK. And as I said, she founded a school, which is still existing in Scotland. Mm-hmm. And she's been, serving in various countries. She's extensively been working in India for quite a long time now, supporting children and adolescents, and for communities, Montessori communities, to set up. I think this is her first visit to Delhi NCR. She's mostly had an experience in the south of India, and I was telling her that this is like a different country, Lesley. And so she's just completed an orientation for the 12 to 18 in Chandigarh, which our team members, Ms. Bhavna and Ms. Nafpreet, have also returned completing from just now. And perhaps they will also love to share their experience with you later on. So Lesley is a specialist in Montessori education, as you see, and we really wanted parents to come and experience, meet her, to get to hear from her. And I cannot express in words how much her mentorship and her guidance has means to me, and she's always available to suggest things. She works very closely with us as a school. She is a very good supporter of what we are trying to do here, and she understands the challenges and how we gain from her experience of how it can be managed in a small community, in an urban setup, etc. So we welcome her, of course, and I feel we are very grateful as a community to have had this opportunity, because it's not every so often that Lesley would travel to Delhi NCR, but we hope to bring her more, so maybe work together in some ways more officially, maybe run orientation programs, etc. here for parents. So over to you, Lesley.
Thank you. Thank you very much for such a lovely, warm welcome. And I must say, what fortunate children you all have. I know you are busy parents and it's a working day, and still you found the time to come along and to hear a little bit more about what your children are having. They're also very fortunate that they have landed in this space, which is so beautifully crafted to set them up for this Montessori journey they're going to take. I have a few notes. I'm not going to give you a lecture, but just a few things I would like to share. And I love this title, You Matter Too, that has been crafted by Nishant and Niti, evolving into the prepared adult children need. And to be a Montessori parent is, it's a very special journey, because you will see unfolding before you your child's personality, along with all of the progress they make in so many areas. You will see the cultivation of this little person growing into a bigger person and ultimately into a really well adapted adult. Yeah, so it's a very special journey you're sharing with them. I also know it comes with its challenges, because you will be questioned by family, by neighbours, by everybody out there. Why are you sending your child to a Montessori school? And I have to say that happens all over the world. It's not just in India. And I would like to really speak to you today as a Montessori parent whose children have graduated and are out there in the adult world, and they are all examples of how Montessori works. Not because I was a wonderful parent, there was nothing exceptional about myself or my husband, but my children were very lucky in that they were able to be part of a Montessori community, and that's what has made them the people that they are today. So I would like to say that, because I think sometimes we don't understand how valuable this environment is. Yeah. Because, you know, Montessori, it's not just a method of education. It's actually what we call an aid to life. So this journey they're going on as they pass through the school here is to support them in the development of their personality in all areas. So, you know, we're looking at their physical development, we're looking at their psychological development, what's happening mentally, what's happening emotionally. We're looking at their intellectual development. What are they learning? What knowledge are they gaining? What do they need to progress in life? We're also looking at their moral development. What values are the children getting? And their spiritual development. And I'm not sure that our contemporary education model looks at all of those areas in what they are offering. There's a lot of focus on just the academic, intellectual development, which is one part of the complete child. Important, yes, but not the only part. And there's recently been, you may have seen, a report from the World Health Organization illustrating the crisis that young people are in globally. Mental health is becoming a real crisis for our young people. There are many reasons which we're not going to go into, but you know, we have to respond to this. We do have to start to look at what can we do where well-being is central to everything that happens in school, the complete well-being of the very young child and, of course, the adolescent. Because ultimately, Montessori's goal at the end of this, when they leave at 18, is to see a fully functioning adult who is able to step into society and take a place with confidence and with ease. And that comes about as the culmination of those previous 18 years. It's not the end, development continues further, but for the purpose of coming to school, we're looking at 18 years of development, yes? It's a very insecure world. Yeah, a lot of anxiety. Nobody quite knows what the world will look like 5 years from now. Maybe not even next year, in fact. Not to mention, of course, the virtual, digital world that is our reality now. So you can see there's a lot of anxiety. Where are our children heading? What are we helping our children become? What do they need to prepare to be in society? And that's where Montessori came up with many, many, many ideas which have been implemented into her vision. Very much if we support the holistic development of the whole child, that will equip them for whatever they have to face. They will have that self-confidence, self-belief, self-knowledge to be able to face whatever confronts them. They'll have that capacity to be adaptable. Yeah, adaptability being something we really, really need in the modern world. And so we take Montessori's ideas, we take her vision, and then we look at how can we implement that. And many, many things which we implement in the school can also be implemented at home. You are very much part of this journey, and it's really important that the home and the school are working hand in hand, so the child's getting a really not just positive message, but predictable message, that what I hear in school, what I do in school and at home are the same. Yeah, that's really important, which means that as parents you also need to know about the Montessori philosophy. What are the Montessori ideas? What are all these materials that you see around? Because they are much more than just about learning concepts. These materials that you see throughout your environment, all the experiences that the children and the adolescents have, all serve to develop their personality as much as their academic knowledge. So Montessori says there are two really important aspects. One is the prepared environment, which is what you see around you, the physical environment, but also the social environment, the group of children of mixed ages, no competition because, you know, they're not direct peers all in the same group with the same expectation put upon them. There is this lovely mixed age group where you will be a younger child, you'll eventually become an older child, and they learn from each other. That social environment is key in Montessori. And then, of course, you have the prepared adults who understand the psychology of the child, and they are able to put the children in contact with the possibilities, the experiences of the environment. So obviously in a Montessori training, these adults that your children are fortunate enough to be with have been prepared. They have prepared themselves to be able to know exactly how to approach your child, when to approach your child, when to step back because your child needs to work alone, and so on and so forth. And these are real qualities which the staff here can share with you as parents, because that also needs to be reflected at home. When do I step in? When do I step back? You know, that kind of relationship. So what is the preparation of the adult? How can you as parents play your part in this developmental progress? Well, the most important piece is to understand what are the core principles that underpin the philosophy. Why did she say, do what I'm asking you to do? She didn't pluck it from the air. She was a doctor, a medical doctor, but she was also a psychologist, and she was a very skilled scientist in observation. She had no preconceived ideas. She observed children, and from those observations, meticulously tracked, she came up with what the children actually needed to do. So you need to know what those principles are that underpin our philosophy. You also need to understand that the child actually constructs himself. If you think about embryology, think about the unborn child in the womb. We didn't do anything to assist that construction. Nature did that. We had a role to play. We had to keep the womb as healthy as possible. That was our job, to make sure that that environment allowed development to happen to its full potential. And we sort of understand that. And then we think that from birth, suddenly we need to teach the child. If we don't teach the child, he won't learn to walk. He won't learn to talk. He won't learn all of these things that are needed to be a human being. Yeah? Why do we suddenly doubt? This process of self-construction continues right through the childhood years. And then from about the age of 12, for the next period of time, there is a self-construction of the adult. And what we need to do is to support that and to trust that that process will happen if the child or the adolescent is put in the right supportive environment. And we have to understand that that is not linear. Human development is not linear. There will be periods where a huge amount of progress, development is being made, and it will be visible to us. We'll be able to see it. And then there will be other periods where we don't see it. There will even be periods where we think, there seems to be a dip here. What's going on? But we have to see human development in the process of 24 years, or for the purposes of school, 18 years. Because what happens is the very small child, think about the child from birth to the age of 3, how that newborn baby is, and how that 3-year-old is, who's about to run into the children's house. Incredible progress, like there will never be ever again. And then there's a refining of all those things, the language, the movement, all the things they have acquired themselves, built themselves, become refined. And then they become elementary children and they seem to change. They can sound a little bit rude, a little bit cheeky. They want to go out without mum and want to be with their friends. We see a different child. And what's going on for that child through the elementary years as they progress, as they develop, is this huge mental development. Now it's not about help me to do things myself. I want to be able to feed myself and dress myself and put on my own shoes and all of that. It's not about that now. It's this huge mental development. Help me to think for myself. I need to be able to learn how to make my own decisions and to think about things. Now that's not so obvious to us as it was with the younger children. But we can't doubt that that is there, which is why we have to understand why they come with so many questions. It might feel sometimes that you're being pestered with questions, with the why and the how and the when and so on and so forth. But that is part of their development, and that won't go on forever. But in that period, they're capable of learning so much. They take in so much knowledge. And then parents panic because there is a dip. As they enter adolescence, there seems to be a dip in their intellectual capacity. Suddenly they don't seem to remember things as well. They don't seem to have the same concentration. They don't seem to have quite the same passion for studying that they had before. And of course parents worry, maybe it's time to leave Montessori and look for something that I understand. That happens all over the world. But we have to understand what's happening with the adolescent. Not just what Montessori observed and gave us solutions for, but what neuroscientists are now supporting. They're supporting her theories with their current knowledge. And that is that the brain is undergoing a massive passage of change during those very early years of puberty. And that is the reason why we see this change. And once that change is complete, or is on the way, it takes many, many years actually to completion, into the 20s, before the adult brain is. And we know the brain is malleable, so all of our lives it's capable of change and change. But after puberty, we see a difference. We see a sort of resuming of that passion for study, that passion that we've seen so often in so many areas in the younger child. And think about this poor adolescent in puberty. That's a huge physical, emotional, hormonal transformation. Montessori compares them to the baby. You know, they're in bodies they don't recognize, a brain that they don't know, and all these kind of anxiety, hesitations, doubts, confidence takes a dip. It's not surprising when you think what is happening. And if we embrace that, acknowledge that, and go with them, we see it comes through where there is this rise again in development, which takes them into a period of incredible capability in what she calls the fourth plane of development, 18 to 24, the years of higher education, if you like. Yeah. So you need to know that it's not linear, and to expect that there will be changes. And instead of resisting those changes, to embrace them and go with them. And that's why you need a community, because you can talk with other parents whose children have been in that place and have come through that place. That's what's so beautiful about having a community of Montessori parents, because you will guide and support each other on this journey. So we have to recognize that. We also have to recognize there are times which are very special through this development. Montessori calls them sensitivities. And we have to offer what will meet those sensitivities. In the very young child, they have this sensitive period for the development of language. They have this sensitive period for refining their sensory perceptions. Sensitive period for coordinating and refining their movement. So we mustn't fasten them down, carrying them everywhere, putting them into buggies all the time. They need to be able to move. We need to talk to them. How will they learn language if we don't communicate? Let them see our faces. Let them see the faces of other people. How do mouths work? It's a sensitive period. And at this time, they are capable of fantastic acquisition. A time they will never ever have in their lives again. So for you in India, where you're working in multiple languages, you need to remember this is the sensitive period where language, coming from a native speaker, it's the time to learn. I can speak there of my own grandson, who's 2 years old, and his mother is Indian, and he's living in the UK, and he's now burst into language, and he's fluent in English, chatting away in English. But he understands when his mother speaks to him. She speaks to him in Urdu. He understands totally, because he's heard it during this sensitive period. And when he ever will come to India, he will be able to communicate in that language. So you need to think about these sensitive periods. Sensitivities for the older children are different. It's a lot about morality, learning what's right and wrong. It's about acquiring as much knowledge and information and understanding as they can. and it's about using the power of imagination. Of course, the young children have also had imagination. They've had this reproductive imagination where they play things that they have seen, things which are real. You know, they play act what they see around them. But these older children in this 6 to 12 group, they have this really creative imagination which allows them to see what went on in the past, what might go on in the future, what's happening far away. They can imagine in the abstract. Yeah. And then the adolescents have their own sensitive periods. And this is a really important one to think. Personal dignity. Now you're faced with an adolescent who is feeling vulnerable, feeling anxious, very uncertain, dip in self-confidence, at a time when they have the possibility to build the foundation of a dignified adult. So how we handle them is it has to be very carefully done. The criticism, the judgment, the nagging, why can't you be like you used to be? Why are you looking like that? Why are you talking in this way? We have to remember, this is a sensitive period for personal dignity. We need to be offering them opportunities to build their confidence. Yeah? While they get through that difficult passage of puberty particularly. And then we also need to acknowledge they have a sensitive period for justice. Not in the what's fair, what's not fair sense, but much more around equity. They become very aware of what's not right in our society. Why is there not a distribution of wealth around the world? Why, at the current moment, why are the US bombing Iran? What's that all about? What are the reasons for that? Is it right? No, it's not right. What are, you know, they have this sensitive period where they want to know about the world, and they want to, I mean, they can't do anything about it. They're powerless at the moment. But those seeds, those conversations, those discussions are very, very important in adolescence. And we also have to remember the goal in Montessori is independence. Yeah? And so we have to be very careful, whether we're a parent or a guide, we don't block the development of their independence. Don't ever do for a child or for an adolescent what they are capable of doing for themselves. And set the bar high. Have aspirations. You will be surprised what they are capable of doing, much more than you would have anticipated. With the young children, that demands of you time and patience. When a child is learning to do things for himself, whether it's around the care of himself or the care of things in his environment, or indeed something he wants to do for one of his little friends, caring for somebody else, it takes time. And there'll be mistakes, and there'll be spillages. And sometimes, you know, they get the shoes on, but then they want to take them off again, and put them on again, and take them off again. And you're in a hurry to get out. And then you have to remember, for this child, it's not about putting on shoes. It's about learning, practicing. That takes repetition, yeah? Practicing so that I can do it by myself. So time is probably the greatest gift you can give to the young children. And to tell the adults around you and your families, they need time so that they develop the skills, functional independence, we call it. When I'm hungry, I can take a snack. When I'm thirsty, I can fetch myself a drink. That kind of independence. And for the elementary children, they're seeking mental independence. You have to answer their questions. And I don't mean you give them the answer, but you show them how and where they can find their answers. You don't want those children to think that the adults know everything, because we don't know everything. But we do know how to help them to find out all the things that they want to find out. And there again, it's time. It's the end of a working day, you know, it's coming to bedtime, and you're thinking, well, they've been at school all day. Those are magical times. Now, I have to say to you, as a parent with grown-up children, those years go by so fast. Before you know where you are, they will have flown the nest. And you will be, I mean, my fondest memories are recollecting the stories we read, the stories we shared together, the conversations we had. They really are magical, magical times which you really should create with your children now to support their development. Yeah. We also need to understand what Montessori means by freedom, because there are many misinterpretations of freedom. Freedom for Montessori doesn't mean the child is free to do whatever he wants to do. That's not a freedom. That's actually what Montessori calls abandoning the child. But we can't be rigid, whereby the child is frightened to touch, frightened to take, frightened to use. The child needs the freedom to be able to go about his work, to do the things he needs to do. So we offer a freedom with boundaries. And by offering clear, consistent, sensible boundaries, the child is able to develop self-discipline. And self-discipline actually is the only discipline that really matters. When the child has self-discipline, and that is cultivated in the young child. And as somebody who's worked with adolescents, I can tell you very clearly, we can identify those adolescents who have cultivated self-discipline in the early years. You can, because it's something you carry with you and you build upon. Yeah? And when you have self-discipline, you're able to take responsibility. And that's very important for the children of the 6 to 12 age group, because freedom for them means they're free to choose their work, they're free to choose where they work, who they work with, which materials they might use, whether they want to be at a table or on the floor or whatever. But there are responsibilities also in their little elementary classroom that have to be carried out. And if they come with self-discipline, that enables them to be able to use that freedom they have to fulfill their responsibilities in a good way in their elementary community. So it's a freedom to do things, yeah, constructively. And then when they come to adolescence, they're not free to choose their work like they have been in the childhood years. They have a lot of choice. Believe me, they have many, many, many choices in the adolescent community. But they also have responsibilities to the community. And they have to balance their personal needs, their personal schedule that they create, their work that they have to do. They have to balance that with the needs of the community, understanding that every choice I make, every decision I make will impact everybody else in the community. And so it's much more a step towards how it's going to be in adult life. Yeah. So we have to really understand what Montessori means by freedom. And the freedom looks different as the children grow. Right, so you need to look around your environment at home and think about, is this supportive of their development of independence? Is our home set up in such a way that it will help them to become independent? You're shaking your head. You're imagining. And that's what we have to do as parents, because that's what the Montessori guides are doing every single day. Does this environment today meet the needs of the children who are going to be coming in? And as parents, we can do that. And it might be very small, simple tweaks that we need to make. There might be big things we can change. It might be an attitude that we are going to change. But just look at your home and think, does it support independence? Does it support the social and moral development? Because the family is the child's social organization. Yeah, they have their social community when they come to school, but the family is a very important social organization. So how is the family embracing the child and the child's developmental needs, really? Yeah. What else can I share with you? We have to think about what skills does the 21st century require? And I'm afraid to say the days of memorization and taking exams in the contemporary method all over the world are gone. They no longer are fit for purpose. And higher educational institutions and the workplaces are demanding more. So now you may have excellent grades. You may leave school at 18 with the top grades. So are many others. And that does not prepare you for what higher education is demanding. It isn't what employers are looking for in the workplace. Yes, the grades are great, and there's no disputing they have to receive what they need to move on in their lives, to move on from school. But employers and institutions, establishments out there are looking for much more in the way of soft skills. And Montessori environments have been preparing children right from the very beginning for the development of these essential soft skills. It's a byproduct almost of the approach that we take in education, yeah? Can they solve problems? Can they face a challenge and find a solution to it? Our children do that because we allow them to make mistakes and to learn from those mistakes. Yeah? What are their critical thinking skills? Or are they just quoting knowledge that they have memorized? Are they critically thinking? Because the world needs creative thinkers right now. And Montessori children, right from the first day they enter the children's house, are supported in learning to think for themselves. It begins with helping them to make informed choices. When they first come in here, they don't know what to do. So the guides very carefully support them in, maybe you would like to try this. And then it moves on to, well, would you like this one or this one? Or then it becomes, well, you know how to use those materials there. You choose which one you would like to work with. So they begin to make informed choices. They're not impulsive. Well, you see the child who flits from this to this to this to this. And some people stay like that for their whole lives. They flip from one relationship to another relationship, or from one job to another job. I'm not saying that changing jobs is bad, it's not. But you know what I mean? Those people who can't find actually what is their vocation, what is their place that they really enjoy their work. And we start with the tiniest of children, helping them to make informed choices. Making decisions. That's the beginning of critical thinking. So you can imagine through their adolescent years, where as a community they have had to discuss things, they've had to find solutions to challenges, they've had to make community decisions in a democratic way. They have practiced democracy at a very real level. Those 18-year-olds can go into the world with very acute critical thinking because they've been practicing it for so long. Can they come up with ideas and implement them? We invite our children to do that all the way through. You'll see the elementary children, some of the things that they have in the way of ideas, and they are supported to manifest those ideas. Because the world needs innovators. It needs people who can take initiative. So those skills are not something that just drop from the sky. They are constructed. When we talk about this self-construction, it's through these activities and these experiences we are supporting that self-construction. Can we self-regulate? Do we have self-discipline? Because that's needed. Yeah? Can we cooperate and collaborate with other people? Because the workplace now is a place of collaboration. No longer are people working in their little pods alone. The workforce is changing. It demands collaboration and cooperation, a sharing of innovations. That's the 21st century, and it's not going to go back. So our young people need to come with the capacity to think outside of the box. Yeah? Can they manage their own time? Time management is crucial in so many ways. Can they set their own goals, track their own progress, share what they have completed with others? Because that's what they're doing in elementary class all the time. Those children from 6 years onwards are setting their own goals. Alongside their guides, they're tracking their progress. They're presenting to their friends what they have learned. And of course, that's taken to a much deeper level in the adolescent years, when they are very responsible for their own learning and what they are learning. They need to learn so much more than is contained in textbooks. They need to learn in a much more dynamic way. Yeah. And do they have time? Because, you know, our approach where we say, end of that lesson, now we're going on to the next subject. And the child's just beginning to get into something, and they're told, stop, now it's time for break, we've all got to go out and play. We don't do that in Montessori. Time is very important in the children's house and all the way through. Now, in the adolescent years, they will understand that they can't just have time to use as they choose, because there will be many responsibilities and they will have to be accountable to the community for fulfilling those responsibilities. But that doesn't mean that we still don't allow them time. In fact, the adolescents need extended time in their studies so that they can go to the depth to which they choose to go. Yeah. Which you don't get when you follow chapter after chapter in a book. Are we without judgment, without rewards and punishments? Because they don't work. We need intrinsic motivation to do things. So in no Montessori environment will you find rewards or punishments. And that's how it has to be in our Montessori homes. Yeah. Otherwise you kill the intrinsic motivation. Yeah. So a lot to do, looking around your home, working hand in hand with your guides who are here, and together exploring what are these underlying principles in Montessori. You need to go to workshops with your guides. You need to explore the environments. Let the guides here help you to understand why we do what we do, why we do it in the way we do it. Because Montessori can't really be compromised. There's no such a thing as bad Montessori. It's either Montessori or it isn't. And it's got, at the end of the day, it can't be judged by just what you can see. It's the non-tangible aspects in the environment that make it Montessori. It's the freedom the children have, but the boundaries that they have, which are necessary for that particular period of development. It's the choices they are allowed to make, the guided choices, which then become the very informed choices, because that gives them the gift to make choices in life which will serve them well. Choosing what to study, choosing what to work as. There comes the word work. Montessori is all about work. And we as adults, as parents, we need to think, what is our attitude to work? And most people see work as a way of earning a living, in which they welcome holidays and weekends. But Montessori has a very different interpretation of work. If we go back to the unborn child again, that fetus is working at creating itself. The young child is the hardest worker of all. Acquiring a language, going from an almost inert being to a 6-year-old who can climb trees and run fast and has perfect balance and coordination. That's the work of the child, and it's to be welcomed. And the work of the 6 to 12-year-old is very much about this acquisition of culture, knowledge and understanding of the world, of the universe actually, for them. That's their work. And that is how they construct their minds. Yeah? And the adolescent needs to be introduced to the world of adult work. They've left childhood. It's a milestone. When puberty onsets, it's the end of childhood. But we can't just expect they will know how to enter society if we haven't shown them what does the adult world look like. How does an adult society function? Well, it functions because everybody does their work. If we all stopped working, society would fall apart. It's not just about what we earn financially ourselves, but it's about our work making a contribution so that society can tick, yeah, so it can function. And so we need to give the adolescents the opportunity to work, to show them what is the adult work here where I am. You know, they're in this period where their brain is not functioning as it was so efficiently earlier on. They've always used their hands throughout their Montessori experience. There's always been concrete materials. It mustn't stop now. In fact, they need it now more than ever. They need to work with their hands. Work with the head and work with the hands. Yeah, it's really crucial for the construction that has to go on in the brains. And we are told if we don't provide work for the hands, it's the head that suffers. It's so crucial. Yeah. So we have to think for our adolescents, what kind of work can we give to them? Montessori suggested agriculture. She suggested that they should be a residential community, living together, working together, studying together. So how can we do that? What can we do? Where do we find the work for our adolescents? We don't have a farm in the middle of this city. So what can we do that will enable the adolescents to use their hands and to understand how society functions, because they have opportunities to do real adult work alongside their studies. One feeds into the other. They need knowledge to do the work, and they need work to help them to understand what they are studying. So the sciences come alive. It has to be real exploration, experimentation, hands-on work, yeah, not just science from a textbook. And that goes across all subjects. And we have ways that your Montessori guides with the adolescents will share with you how we work. Montessori has her own educational syllabus, 12 to 18. It's a very, very full syllabus. It's much bigger than any national curriculum anywhere in the world. And how we implement that syllabus, they're smiling because they've just worked with it. As the adolescents, enter the adolescent community, the guides can share with you, how do we implement this educational syllabus? How do we embrace what they have to do at a national level? Because we know that they have to do national exams. That's part of the journey. How do we do that in a Montessori way, so that they get what they need, but through our approach? And that's what people learn to do in the trainings. And when we share that with parents, how the learning happens for the 12 to 18s, as you can imagine, people say, I wish I had gone to a school like that. I wish I had learned that way. Because they're learning not just academically, they're doing that, but they're learning socially, how to be a member of a community. It's a sort of microcosm of adult society with roles and responsibilities and accountability at the end of the day. Yeah. So it's a social development. Montessori describes the 12-year-old as the social newborn. Imagine that newborn baby who knew nothing. And now you have this 12-year-old who knows nothing about what it means to be an adult. And to be a fully functioning, independent adult, it requires development in all of those areas that we referred to. Yeah, the physical development is clear and obvious, but there are all the other areas which need to be nurtured and supported and guided in a very compassionate way. Yeah. And as they come through puberty, you begin to see the young adult emerging, and they become capable of really, really great work. You can see by the age of 18, they are so ready to step into the real adult world, because they've had that protection. They've been allowed to explore. They've been allowed to discover and to understand the mechanism of adult society, but in a very safe, protected environment, which is what Montessori says is the most important thing of all. I mean, we're now having to think, how do we support them to navigate the digital? That's perhaps our most recent challenge, and I'm not sure that we have the answers.
But that's what we are having to work on now. Because, you know, we live in a digital world, we can't remove it. But how do we navigate it in a constructive way? That's just one of the challenges in the work. But Montessori gave us such a clear guideline. And what is so wonderful to see is that contemporary neuroscience is validating everything that she said from her observations. So we have to follow those. So you're lucky you have trained adults who can inform you on what these are. You need to come together regularly to talk Montessori, to understand Montessori, talk to each other, listen to your guides at all levels, from those with the youngest children to those who will be with the adolescents, and understand that it's a journey that goes all the way. There's no stopping off points along the way. It's an exciting journey. You're very privileged to be here as Montessori parents. Really privileged to have the guides that you have and the possibilities that you have. So I would really encourage you to invest in that. Learn, ask questions, challenge the guides. Montessori wants us to question, why are we doing that? You know, help us to understand what we're doing. And then not just trusting Montessori, but trusting your child. This child who came along as the perfect newborn. Trust that that power of self-construction continues. And don't lose faith when they hit puberty, because that's just a new beginning. Do you have any questions? I'm sure you have questions rather than just listening to me. I could talk about adolescence, or actually, and young children too, all day long, but do you have questions?
I think you've touched upon a lot of the conversations that we have. And the one part where you said something about national exams and all those kind of things, because I know that we discourage competition for a very valid reason. The outside reality is that of competition. So the challenge really as parents that we have is finding what's that fine line in terms of how do we, prepare them or help them prepare for the world outside while staying true to the fundamentals.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same all over the world. That's a really common question. I think, first of all, they don't see themselves as in competition with anybody else. They will set their own goals. So maybe if anything, you could say they're in competition with themselves. They know where they need to get and want to get. They've never had a competitive environment, so they don't really buy into competition. That doesn't mean to say they don't set goals for themselves which are rather high. You'll find Montessori children, almost young adults, graduates, they set goals higher perhaps than would have been expected, because they have the self-belief and they have the courage to know, I'm capable. If I want to do something, I'll be able to do it. If I have a dream of getting into a specific place, what do I need to do to get there? And you support them on that journey. What do they need to do to get there? National exams are everywhere. They're in every country. They actually don't differ that much. There are some which are maybe easier, should we say, to align with in the Montessori ethos, but it's possible with all of them. And I think you need to maybe look out to other Montessori adolescent communities, particularly, and see how it's being done. I was working in Morocco for a while, a country very similar to your own, probably with a a national curriculum which is maybe even more rigid than yours, although yours is really evolving. I mean, it's lovely to see things are really moving in India. But Morocco was very rigid, and so they decided in the adolescent community they would follow the IGCSE route. That school came out with the top results in the whole of the continent. Those adolescents in that community, they were the top students. Now, they were in competition with students in different African countries who were in very high fee paying British schools, French schools, well, no, not French schools, British schools, American schools, and so on and so forth. It was the Montessori school in Casablanca that came out with the best results, following a pure Montessori ethos. So we don't need to worry about it not being possible. I mean, that will be ongoing dialogue with your guides. And you will see through the work that they are doing, through the practical work, and how they can explain so much about their practical work, and through what they are writing, you will see that they are well and truly covering what they need to know for their national exams, whether it's the International Baccalaureate or CBSE, and also talk to the other adolescent communities in India, where they are actually already having graduates now that have graduates coming from an adolescent community, one doing CBSE route and one doing IGCSE, and their grades are on a par with everybody else, but they've got there using the Montessori approach. I understand when something is new, you feel it's untested. I can see that. But I think, you know, your guides are able to communicate with others who are doing the same thing, both in India and outside of India too. We have a lot of graduates out there. It would be quite nice to invite some graduates to talk about where they've gone, what they've done, and more importantly, how Montessori helped them to get there. Because that's what they say when they come back, you know, sort of, I don't know, 24 onwards. They come back and they are able to then articulate how Montessori helped me, which they can't actually do when they're in it. So to have some graduates would be very good to hear. And you can do that online, you know, because they're all over the world, really.
Have a session. Zorian once.
Oh, did you?
Zorian is Leslie's son. He is a Montessori graduate. We've already had one such session online.
So what he did was he went to university. He went right through Montessori, and he did the International Baccalaureate, where he got top grades in that, having lived on a farm and done all of that. Yes, he went to university, studied international development, which actually brought him to India. He did a year in India as part of his diploma. And then when he graduated, he came to work for an NGO in Chennai. He did set up an adolescent community because things very often happen by chance. He was asked if he would talk to parents when it was discovered that he was a Montessori graduate from a farm in Europe, and he did, and was asked. Yes, it's where I worked for a long time. Yeah, and then he did the International Baccalaureate in the high school. And yes, he set up an adolescent community. Now he lives and works in London, working in he's head of curriculum in a special school in London, doing great work, actually. It isn't a Montessori school, but he's bringing the Montessori principles. Yeah, he is. And the difference is impactful. But no, I mean, there are a variety of graduates. I could tell you about my daughter. I hope this is not being recorded. She would. My daughter went right through Montessori, and she did biological sciences at university, did her master's, PhD, and all of that. Now she's working in an infant community. That's been her choice. No, that's my other daughter is in Australia. Oh, that's the one thing, you know, when you bring up independent children, they end up all over the world. Yeah. That's why I'm saying you're sitting home with your empty nest, and they are doing high-flying things around the world because they are confident. Yeah, nothing phases them. Yes, so it was very interesting how she made her decision. She is confident that the most important contribution I can make is in the infant community, because that is such a formative time. And she's looking at it in a way a little bit like Montessori did, as a biologist. She's looking at it in a scientific way, you know. That's what she's doing now. She might not do it forever, but that's what she's doing for now. Yeah. And that's what we mean about no attachment to anything. She's capable of, you know, she did her PhD. She was a wonderful student. But her choice of career, or at the moment, is something different. Yeah. And that's what we want for our children. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's time that we wrap up.
Yes.
I'm sure you have some more questions.
Yeah.
Any of them, I mean, they will answer that. If they keep saying same thing in different ways.
And you have experts here. You have experts in your community who understand the importance of putting the child and the adolescent in the centre, putting their development in the centre.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
So this was very helpful. It's a journey, like Lesley said. I mean, you never feel that you know it all.
No.
So, scientific study of the natural phenomena that we are.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming, all of you. And I know it can be a work day.